Now, you might remember Gary Bloom as the voice of Football Italia on Channel 4. Gary has had an amazing career as a sports broadcaster. He's covered World Cups, Olympics, all types of different sports events across the world. And Gary is now a trained counsellor and psychotherapist. So I thought, what better way to talk about his amazing life and amazing career than by getting him on the show. So I'd like to welcome this morning to Sportuccino, Gary Bloom. Gary, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing this morning?
Bit shocked. Just waking up to the news about the US election, and welcome to Bloom Towers. It's not quite the same as Trump Towers. I've got slightly fewer rooms than him, but yeah, welcome to Oxford. This is my home.
Well, some people are so surprised that he's president. Perhaps from Bloom Towers you could be prime minister one day, Gary. Who knows?
I don't think so.
Well, you say that, but people's lives and careers change, and you have been a sports commentator and broadcaster for many, many years. And as I mentioned in the introduction, you're now a psychotherapist and counsellor. Just explain to our viewers how you've made that transition.
Gosh, it's a good question. The honest answer is I don't know. I think I'd like to go back to the start of my career when I was working in local radio. And I really had the chance to work with people. Work with football teams, meet people, get the chance to know them very well. I'm talking about football managers and players. Going way back to the day when I was working in Liverpool in local radio, we were allowed to go on the team bus for away games, which is an extraordinary idea these days. So I had personal relationships with the players and the management teams and the at board level too. And actually what went out of the sport maybe after the invention of the Premier League was the chance to build relationships with people. So when I was commentating early on in my career, you just found that you didn't actually have those relationships anymore with people, and maybe you grabbed a quick chat with people in the tunnel after the game. But the way the sport has gone, really the role of a commentator is very, very I suppose the word is anodyne. It's you go in, you do it, and you come back again. If you have a chance to chat to anybody, it's pretty rare. And I just wanted to broaden out the people I was meeting and have different conversations with different people. I'd always been interested in psychology. And I really wanted to try and make a difference to my life and other people's lives. And it kind of grew from there.
Do you think, you mentioned there about being on the bus and everything like that, do you think sport has become a bit too sterile? I know like in the NBA and in the NFL, they allow reporters into the dressing room and the changing rooms after matches. Does the Premier League need to do something like that, do you think?
It's too difficult these days. I mean, when I was working in local radio in Liverpool, we were one of maybe 2 or 3 people interested in the football club. There was 2 radio stations, BBC Radio Merseyside and our radio station, Radio City. There was one local newspaper, and that was it. But we knew the managers. We could ring them up. We had their home numbers, and I was smart myself. On every Sunday morning, that I'd have to ring a manager up and see how his players are injured. And I used to ring up Bob Paisley and Howard Kendall and Kenny Dalglish. And when my kids were born, they congratulated me, and I didn't tell them. They knew what was going on in my life. And to me, that was a very golden era because it was pre-Sky. Sky changed a lot of things. Now Sky allowed me to have the career I did, and the huge interest in football grew from there. So I can't complain about it, but just it didn't suit me. I mean, I still commentate. I still love commentating, but it's a very, very different job than it was back then. When if I was ill or something happened to me, or the teams knew about it, and players, I used to give players lift back to their homes from the training ground and stuff like that. You can't imagine that happening these days.
No, especially with all the fancy cars they can now afford. So, Gary, you have psychologists, you have psychiatrists, and you have psychotherapists. Now, you're a psychotherapist. What exactly is that for those people who don't exactly know?
Okay, so psychotherapist deals one-to-one in a clinical situation with people who, the vast majority of our work is with mood disorders. So those are people dealing with anxiety or depression, which are on either ends of the same scale, in my opinion. People who have addictive behaviours, so we're talking about addicted to booze, alcohol, same thing, of course, drugs, sex. I mean, there's a whole range of things people are addicted to, and understanding our own addictions. Those addictions are normally covering up difficult feelings. And my job is to look at those difficult feelings with the people I'm treating and hope they have a better understanding of themselves. I'm not a psychiatrist because that's a psychological doctor. I can't offer people medication, but I understand how medication works and understand how mental health issues work as well. So that's my training, to understand exactly who I can help and who I can't help. But I specialise in working with sportsmen. I had no idea that my two careers would fuse together. And the majority of my clients are sports people who are finding it really difficult in their particular sport, dealing with successes and failures and their home lives and all the pressures those sports put on them.
Well, every week on another podcast I do called The Best in the World with Richard Parr, I speak to Olympic champions, world champions, former world record holders and former world number ones. And in fact, today, Heather Stanning, she was a previous guest on my show. She's just retired from rowing after being a double Olympic champion. Now, one of the things I find with them is a lot of it is to do with routine and the fact that they have that routine every day. When you're dealing with some of the clients you have, do some of their troubles stem from a lack of routine, and how important is it to help them get back on track?
I wouldn't say it was routine. A lot of them are just, to me, this is just a personal view, and dealing with sportsmen and women, is more the fact that they have two personas. They have a sporting persona, which is incredibly predicated on whether they win or lose. It's as simple as that. And when they win, everything's wonderful. And when they lose, or out the team, or injured, it's not. And it's actually building up the second persona, the real person behind the sportsman or woman, that I think is my work. Because if the only way you can measure yourself is whether you've won a race or whether you've in a team or scoring tries or scoring goals, there might be a million and one reasons why that doesn't happen for you. Just luck or injury or whatever. It's about valuing yourself as a person, whether you win or lose. And that's the difficult bit.
Well, talking about winning and losing, I know this autumn you're covering Rugby's Autumn Internationals, and New Zealand had that shock defeat to Ireland last weekend. I think it was a momentous victory there for Ireland. Now, what do you think probably went through New Zealand's mind that day? Was it overconfidence? Was it just belief that they were unbeatable? What do you think perhaps that could have been, or was it just luck?
I don't think it was luck. I think they came up against a very good Irish side. But remember, New Zealand were playing in the Northern Hemisphere. They were playing in Chicago. There was a huge weight of expectation on a largely Irish crowd with Irish sentiments, strong Irish sentiments there. So it was difficult for them. They'd come off an 18-match unbeaten streak. I just think Ireland were better on the day. And maybe we saw it in New Zealand's previous international when they met Australia. They didn't play particularly well. One or two key injuries on last Saturday, and it just conspired against them. They didn't play particularly badly, though. They made some really bad handling errors and they gave away a lot of penalties. But let's take our hats off to the Irish. They played magnificently well, and that huge, really juggernaut momentum of the Irish team, a mixture of brawn and skill, just pushed them away.
Yeah, a record crowd at Soldier Field in Chicago there. Away at Italy next. Are we expecting them just to get back on track this weekend?
You'd think so, but they're coming up against another Irish challenge because the Italian team are now under new management. Conor O'Shea's taken over there. And he's promising Italy a proper game. I mean, Italian rugby's been in the doldrums of late, and it's been 10 years since they've really been at the top of their game. And it's taken a bit of honesty by the Italian Rugby Federation to say, look, we have to put things right. They're not competitive at the moment, or haven't been in the last few Six Nations Championships. So they need to get back on song. And if you want to be the best, you've got to play the best. And I still reckon New Zealand are ranked number one in the world, despite their loss to Ireland. I think Italy will have a really tough game. I imagine New Zealand will win, and they'll probably win by quite handsomely, but I don't think it'll be as huge. I mean, if these teams met maybe 18 months ago, I think it would have been a huge result, but I don't see it being as big as maybe many people predicted maybe 2-3 weeks ago. Conor O'Shea have got this team ready.
Yeah, New Zealand having won the last two World Cups. All right, England versus South Africa, that's also this weekend. England's first taste of action in this autumn internationals. They've had an amazing year so far, but they haven't beaten South Africa, I don't think, since 2006. How much can belief change the mindset of a team? Like, they haven't beaten them since 2006, but they're on that amazing run. Is that going to make a difference to England, do you think, Gary?
I think so. I think they're up against a weakened South African side who last weekend drew with the Barbars. South Africa are not in a great state at the moment. I mean, Eddie Jones's side are playing magnificent, and there's a really interesting debate going on about, okay, New Zealand are probably the best team in the world, but England are not a million miles behind them, and it's a shame that England are not playing New Zealand for a couple of years yet. It'll be interesting to see what happens when the Lions go down to New Zealand next year. England are on the rails, and I can really see. First of all, I see England winning against South Africa. I know there's been a long time since they've met South Africa, but they're on the up and up, and I'd really see good things for English rugby, especially after the successes playing in the Southern Hemisphere against Australia. When they had that whitewash, it's a great time to be an England Rugby Union fan.
It's amazing what Eddie Jones has done to this team, and that Lions tour is very exciting. Gary, it's been so great to have you on the show this morning, talking about your journey into psychotherapy and also talking about rugby. Gary, just before you go, could you tell our viewers how they can continue to follow what you're up to on social media or anything like that, please?
Yeah, please feel free to follow me. I'm at Bloomers 57 on Twitter, and I post things on there. But it'd be great to hear from anybody if you have any thoughts. I mean, we have hardly talked about mental health issues, but I would say to anybody watching, if you are feeling anxious or depressed, and those feelings have gone on for a long time, please seek help. We have a obscene, I can only say the word obscene, suicide rate, especially of young men in this country. At the moment, it's higher than any other civilized country in Europe. It's not good enough. And the first thing about men, and it's interesting, we're in November, and you probably see I'm growing my tash for November, when we recognise mental health issues and men's issues. Men are incredibly bad at owning up to mental health issues. If you're going through a tough time, please seek help. If you want my help in pushing you in the right direction or pushing you in a direction where you can access directories which are online, please contact me on Twitter at Bloomers57, or look at the BACP or UKCP websites where you can find a therapist.
Gary, thank you so much for that. Yeah, that's very important, and for people to try and get help. Gary, thank you so much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it. Gary Bloom, sports broadcaster and psychotherapist, thank you for appearing on Sportuccino.
You're very welcome.